production costs are increasing across the board, more on energy in some countries, more wages in other countries. And so the question we asked is, will you pass it or not to consumers, and will you take it or not into profit margins? And the general trend is that there is a majority of CEOs that say that they're passing it down to consumers. So this is the first preferred strategy. And then there is a smaller percentage that will take it into profit margins. So that's the second best options. And if you look at percentages, I'm not going to read them because we don't have time for that. But the percentages of CEOs that prefer one strategy or the other is not the same in the different regions. But I think the message is quite clear there.
But I think, Ilaria, at a certain point, how long can passing it on go for until I think companies come to a point where the high prices start to eat into demand, and it's a choice of either not selling it or selling it at a lower margin. I think it's an interesting question in terms of when does that sort of threshold, when is it met? Is it being met now? For instance, we saw massive corrections in U.S. equity markets recently. I know that prior, earlier in the year, a lot of the margins were holding up quite well and earnings were good. But moving forward, I question, at a certain point, you just can't defend your margins anymore.
Yeah, excellent point, Erik. I totally agree. And I would add to that perhaps, if you look at company by company, because every company has to face this decision and probably has a different answer, I would say that answer depends on three factors. One is, in general, if wages keep up with the price increases, because that determines how much the purchasing power of household is hit. And we know for sure that at the lower income levels, it is hit big times. In Europe as well as in the US, despite the strong wage changes. The other factor is the elasticity. If you can easily switch to a similar good. So that's one element. And then the third element is if the company that is producing the similar good is increasing or not its prices, which is, of course. So I spoke to different members, and some of them say we cannot increase prices, so we have to take it in our margin because it's a market that is extremely competitive. Goods are kind of similar, so it's not that the price difference explains such a high difference in the quality of the product. So we don't have a choice. We'd rather actually divest that production line because it's really not interesting anymore, rather than increasing prices. So there are limits there, of course, and the limits explain why the percentages are not the same.